Hi everyone, in this video we are going to be looking at multiple choice questions 13 through 24 from the August 2019 Regents exam. So let's first start with number 13. In quadrilateral QRST, diagonals QS and RT intersect at M, which statement would prove it's a parallelogram? So we have to think about the properties of a parallelogram in order to do this, and you notice there are no pictures here. So I'll draw one in a second here, but here's some common instances that would make a quadrilateral parallelogram. We could know that opposite sides are parallel. We could know that opposite sides are congruent. And for each of those, I'm talking about both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. We could know that the diagonals bisect each other. And something else we could use is one set of opposite sides is parallel and congruent. So these are just some main ideas about parallelograms. I'm just going to look at my answer choices to see if one of these fits. And again, we'll draw a picture just to kind of help us visualize what we're talking about. So QRST, when you're labeling your own shape, go in a circular manner. So if I start looking at the four choices here, one says TQR and QRS are supplementary. That's true. That talks about the top two angles, but it's not giving us anything about the bottom two angles. So I'm going to say that's not enough to show that it's a parallelogram. 2 is saying that QM, and I'll draw on the diagonals here, QM and SM are congruent, QT and RS are congruent. That's kind of merging a couple of facts together. Like these are diagonals bisecting, and then these are talking about the sides, and that doesn't really fit one of our properties over there. So I'm going to cross that out as well. For number 13, QR is congruent to TS, and QT is congruent to RS. That one looks good to me because that one's talking about both pairs of opposite sides, and it's saying that they're congruent. Choice 4 is saying one set of sides, opposite sides, is congruent. The other set is parallel. That could mean that it's just a trapezoid. So the one that must make this a parallelogram is choice 3, that the opposite sides are congruent. 14, a standard size golf ball has a diameter of 1.680, and automatically you should go to your calculator, have that, and now I know that the radius is 0.84 inches. The material used to make the golf ball weighs 0.6523 ounces per cubic inch. And what is the weight to the nearest hundredth of an ounce? So this unit here, notice it's ounces per cubic inch. It's a unit of mass over a unit of volume. So this is really talking about 0.6523 is the density. Density is mass over volume. That's what our unit's here. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the volume of the golf ball. The formula for volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. We now know r is 0.84. And I'm just going to go over to my calculator and start typing that in. And so I know that the volume of the golf ball is 2.482712709.5. I'm not going to round this yet because this is not my final answer. We want to know what is the weight. So if I take what I know, and I'm going to just move over here, the density is 0.6523. The mass we don't know. The volume is that number we just found. If I cross multiply, you should see I'm going to multiply that 2.4 by that 0.6523. And I get that the mass is 1.62 to the nearest hundredth, so choice 2. 15, Chelsea is sitting 8 feet from the foot of a tree. From where she is sitting, the angle of elevation is 36 degrees. Automatically, I see angle of elevation, and I know we're talking about a right triangle trig question. So I know that this is 36. Okay, so the tree is the vertical piece. And so she's over here. So I'm going to put just Chelsea over here. And she's 8 feet from the tree. if her line of sight starts 1.5 feet above the ground, okay, so this is 1.5 feet above the ground, how tall is the tree to the nearest foot? So let's call this side of the triangle X, and I'm going to use tangent here, because if I go in and I label this is my opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, tangent of 36 is equal to X over 8. Cross multiply, so I have 8 times tangent 36, and that's 5.812340224. Notice that looks like it's going to be choice 3. However, we have to add this 1.5 to it. So let's add 1.5. And I get 7.3 approximately. So to the nearest foot, that's 7. In 16, we are given right triangle ABC. We have altitude CD intersects hypotenuse AB at D. Which equation is always true? What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this picture. There's really 3 right triangles in this picture. There's this one in pink. There's this one in blue. And there's this big one in green. What I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw these triangles so that they're facing the same way. So let's start with the pink one. That one I'm going to keep as is. I'm going to rotate the blue one so that the hypotenuses are in corresponding locations. And now I'm going to draw the biggest one. And when we look at the biggest one, here are our letters. So let's color code this just so you can see how this relates to the original picture. And when you have a picture like this and you have the right triangle where the altitude is drawn, all of the triangles are similar to one another. So what that means is the corresponding sides are proportional. That's why all of our answer choices have to do with proportions. So we have to see which one correctly matches up corresponding sides. So choice 1, AD to AC. So let's look at my picture here, AD to AC, CD to BC. That's the same pattern, so that one works, and I think this answer is going to be choice 1, but let's look at one more just to verify, and you can see something that's wrong here. If I look at choice 2, AD to CD, and then it goes BD to CD. Do you see how my arrow is kind of going backwards, what we're talking about here? So since that doesn't match, that's not the answer, and you'll see the same idea for 3 and 4. 17, a countertop for a kitchen is modeled with the dimensions shown below. An 18-inch by 21-inch rectangle will be removed for the installation of the sink. What is the area of the installed countertop to the nearest square foot? Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is this is an L shape. Let's break this so that it is no longer an L shape, and let's just split it into 2 rectangles. You could split it the way I did, or you could have gone this way, or both. But I'm going to split it like this. So I have this rectangle up top that is basically 2 by 8, and so therefore its area is 16. Then I have this one over here that's 2 by 3, because notice the whole thing was 5, and we basically just took 2 away from it. That area is 6, so the total area is 16 plus 6, or 22. That unit would be square feet, because all of those units were in feet. But now let's talk about the sink. The sink is not in feet, it's in inches. And that's going to create a little bit of an issue, so we have to convert that. So if this is 18 inches, we divide by 12. And now I know, okay, this is 1.5 feet. The 21 inches, we're going to divide by 12. I know this is 1.75 feet now. And the area would be 1.5 times 1.75, length times width, and 2.625. So if we want to find the area of the shaded part, we're going to take 22. We're going to subtract out that area. And to the nearest square foot, we get choice 4, which is 19. 18. In the diagram below, BC connects B and C on the congruent sides of isosceles triangle ADE. ABC is isosceles with vertex angle A. And we get some measurements. So let's label these. AB is 10. BD is 5. DE is 12. What is the length of BC? I'm going to put an X there. If you remember before, I separated the triangles on a question when they were overlapping. I'm going to do the same thing here. Because if I look at the small triangle, this is 10, this is X. If I look at the big triangle, this is 15, this is 12. We might not see that it's going to be 15 if we don't separate the triangles. And now I can set up a proportion. 10 goes to 15, X goes to 12. When we cross multiply, we get 15x equals 120, divide by 15, and X is 8. 19, which statement must be true when we're given the right triangle with C as the right angle? Well, the sine of an angle is equal to the cosine of its complement. A and B are the complementary angles here, and so this is going to be choice 1. If you have trouble memorizing this, use SOHCAHTOA. If I look, I'll verify choice A. The sine of A is opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine of B is adjacent over hypotenuse, and they match. Okay, so 19 is 1. All right, number 20. In right triangle RST, altitude TV is drawn to hypotenuse RS. So let's definitely draw a picture here. Okay, so we know the hypotenuse is RS, and we know that we have altitude TV. So it looks like this. Altitudes form right angles, so I'm going to put those right angles in there. If RV is 12, RT is 18, we're looking for the length of SV. So when I take a look at this problem, this is one where we're going to once again find the corresponding pieces and set up a proportion, or you can use a shortcut that I like to use, which is either called Hills, so this is all for 20 here, or SAS. In this case, this is going to be a Hills question. The hypotenuse, H is for hypotenuse, is X plus 12. L is for leg, is 18. The leg is 18 again. And S is for segment. We're talking about the segment that's closest to that leg. So in this case, 12. And now we cross multiply. So I'm going to get 12x plus 144 is equal to 324. When I am solving this, I'm going to move 144 over. I get 12x is 180 and divide by 12. And I get that x is 15, choice 2. 21, what is the volume in cubic centimeters of a right square pyramid with base edges 64 centimeters long and a slant height of 40? All right, so if I have volume, I'm going to go to my reference sheet and grab that volume formula. So it's 1/3 capital B times H. Capital B is area of the base. We know the base in this picture is a square, and all sides are 64. So the area of a square with side 64 is 64 times itself, or 64 squared, right? Think about it, it's length times width, so 64 times 64. But the height of this pyramid is not 40. It says the slant height is 40. So if I think about looking at a pyramid head on, I know this is 64 and this slanted height is 40. I need the vertical height of the pyramid. So in order to do this problem, I'm going to have the base. I'm going to look at this right triangle, and I'm going to do Pythagorean theorem. So 32 squared, let's say plus b squared equals 40 squared. Okay, so 32 squared gives us 1024. 40 squared gives us 1600. We're going to subtract the 1024 over. And we're going to take the square root. And we get that b is 24. So that is our actual vertical height. That's what's going in for h. And now I could type this whole volume calculation into my calculator. So 1/3 times 64 times 64 times 24. And we get our volume to be 32,768. So that is going to give us choice 3. 22, we are given chords of a circle, and which relationship always is true. When you see this, the formula or rule is that when you take one chord, the product of both pieces of it is equal to the product of the other two pieces. So that is going to be choice 4. This one's a little bit of memorization, unless we were to draw some similar triangles here. But I'm going to memorize that RT times TS, the two parts of chord 1, is equal to PT times TQ, the two parts of chord 2. For 23, a rhombus is graphed on the set of axes below. What transformation would carry the rhombus onto itself? So you can map a shape onto itself either by using a line of symmetry, okay, or rotational symmetry. For rotational symmetry, if you look at choice 1, that's talking about rotational symmetry because it says the word rotation, and it says 180 degrees, which basically is like upside down. But it says about the origin. That's the problem here. If you look at the origin, that is not the middle of this rhombus. In fact, we could see, right, here's the middle. 0, 1 would change things here. So I'm going to cross off choice 1. When you're talking about line symmetry, you're talking about a line that basically splits the shape into two equal parts. So if I have a reflection over 1/2 x plus 1, here's 1, going up 1 over 2, and continuing that pattern. It is going through the shape, but when we take these points, like this one here, and reflect it over, it is not landing on top of the other vertices. So we know here, okay, it's not going to map onto itself. For choice 3, a reflection over y equals 0, that's the same as the x-axis. That's not a line of symmetry, so that's out. But choice 4 is our correct one. X equals 0 is the same as the y-axis. You can see that that's a line of symmetry. And let's say I take this point and want to reflect over that line. It's going to land right over here, which works out. It lands on top of existing vertices. All right, and our last multiple choice, number 24, a 15-foot ladder. I basically read that and know automatically, okay, it's a SOHCAHTOA right triangle trig question. The ladder is always the hypotenuse. It's leaning. And it makes an angle of 65 degrees with the ground. What is the horizontal distance? And that's always going to be the horizontal piece. So in this case, like the bottom of the triangle to the nearest tenth. So let's use SOHCAHTOA here. Here's my opposite side, adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Since there's something written on the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side, we're going to be using cosine. Again, think about SOHCAHTOA. We have adjacent and hypotenuse, so that's why we're going to pick cosine. So cosine of 65 equals x over 15. Cross multiply. 15 times cosine of 65 is equal to 6.33, so on, and that gives us choice 1, 6.3. You can head to the next video in this playlist to see the answers to the part 2 questions from this Regents exam.